Hello, Lovebugs. I'm Lizzie. I'm a relationship coach and an expert on all things connection, communication, and yes, conflict. And today I want to talk about that third C, conflict, and what we do after or even during a conflict to repair, literally. So I've worked with a lot of couples, and in doing so, I've geeked out on so much of the research around what makes repair effective and what makes repair ineffective. And you probably know, if you're watching this, that repair is such a foundation for the resilience of your relationship. It's not about avoiding the conflict. It's not about erasing the conflict and figuring out step by step what to do to prevent the exact same situation from happening. It's about how you show up and how you come together to make yourself safe in a world where what happened did happen. So that said, what I've noticed from working with couples is that when you're going through a repair process, there are all of these beautiful contradictions that come up, and it can be really difficult to hold these. And so I thought I would make a series on repair-adoxes so that you can open up space and find creative solutions even when there are contradictions in this process. So yeah, you can look at the formats, you can go through some of the templates, but if you get an understanding of these internal processes, I think it's really going to enhance your experience and your connection with your darling, annoying partner. So, repair-adox number one is that when you get really good at repair, when you get really comfortable with repair, you end up not even needing to repair as much. And so once you're like not scared of it anymore, then you barely even get to do it. And at the same time, you don't want to treat that as a situation where it's like, okay, it's better to ask for forgiveness later than permission. So you don't want to be like, oh, well, we can just repair later, and so I can just do whatever the fuck I want now because it doesn't matter. So you want to look at this similar to if you've ever been rock climbing or if you've ever like seen anyone rock climbing. They harness into this equipment that their partner holds so that as they're walking up this wall, they know that if they miss a rock and they fall, their partner will hold taut on this rope and they'll sort of just like coast in the air. And what that does is it creates a sense of safety so that you can be curious as you're climbing up this wall. You can be like, okay, I'm pretty sure that I can reach that rock over there. I'm not positive, but I'm willing to take the risk because I know that if I fall, I'm not going to die and I'm not going to get hurt. And repair is similar because when you know that even if you make a mistake, even if you hurt your partner unintentionally, if you know that there's going to be this way that if you fall, it's still going to be okay, you're not going to get horribly emotionally injured, that you guys will have this system for working through it, that actually means that you're going to be less anxious and cautious and take more of the interpersonal risks that are actually abundant and creative and not necessarily reckless and just like, oh, I don't care about your feelings. Because again, if you think of rock climbing, just because you have this thing where you can fall off the wall, the whole point of rock climbing is that you're trying to see what you can do. And relationships are the same way. So once you get really good at repair and you have this situation where you're like, oh my God, I did hurt my partner or my partner did hurt me, then you know that you can have this situation where you're going to reconnect and this thing isn't going to make or break you. And that gives you a lot of confidence and a lot of trust in the risks that you can take. Repair-adox number two. You have to be willing to be the villain in order to be the hero. So this is something that I see over and over, and actually I've experienced it myself because it's such a tempting one. So this is the scenario. your partner's coming to you and they're sharing vulnerably about something that you said or something that you did that because of how they interpreted it, they were really hurt. And you're seeing them hurt and you're like, oh my God, I didn't actually mean for them to feel that way. And there's a really simple explanation for this. And if they know the explanation, then they're going to understand that I love them and care about them. And so what happens is they tell you that they were hurt and you say, oh, but here was my intention. And what you're actually trying to do there is amazing. You're trying to let your partner know, hey, I care so much about you and I love you so much, and it sucks that you don't know that in this moment. But the way to actually show them that is by listening to them when they're describing you in maybe like a villainous way, in a way that you don't align with, in a way that kind of hurts you to hear. If you can listen to them and if you can be what I call willing to villain, then you're actually achieving your goal in a different way. You are showing them, hey, I'm here. I care so much about you that I'm willing to hear your perception of what happened, even if it paints me in a light that I don't really like. And then we can, of course, work out all the details later of like what was actually happening and what I meant. But in that moment, the way that you're going to show them how much you care is by hearing their perspective on the situation. So that is repair-adox number 2. Repair-adox number 3 is that just because you still feel crappy about what happened doesn't mean that you're not doing the repair correctly. These things are really tough when you have these moments where out of nowhere you're sort of forced to doubt the strength of your connection. You're forced to doubt that when you guys are each just doing your thing, that you will naturally know exactly how the other person wants to be cared for and loved. These moments can bring up a lot of discomfort and a lot of reminders that, wow, communication, constant communication is really important, and that, wow, I need to do a lot of work to make sure that we're on the same page. And that can be really uprooting and really upsetting, but that doesn't mean that your partner hasn't apologized enough. That doesn't mean that you haven't shared with them how much it hurt and what came up for you. It's just a really uncomfortable reality of having faced a situation where there was a rift or a conflict, and that can be really hard to digest. So at a certain point, if you're still upset and you feel like you really have talked through everything that you possibly can on the surface, I give you permission to just marinate. And even if you want to do your own things for a while, fine. If you want to try hanging out and not processing and just doing something completely different, even if you're still kind of upset, fine. Like, just give yourselves a chance to marinate, and what's going to happen is that your unconscious is going to do a lot of the work to process and see if there's anything else that's still coming up about that. But just because you still feel icky, it doesn't mean that you guys aren't doing the repair right. It's just that this is a really hard thing to navigate and overcome. And there's really no such thing as kind of getting back to equilibrium. It's, again, that you're learning to live in a world where what happened, happened. And you're figuring out what that means for you. And that can be a really creative and a little bit more of a long-term process. So give yourself that space. The next repair-adox is about apologizing, literally saying, I am so sorry. And the paradox here is that apologies can be really, really powerful when used well. And because of that, you don't want to cry wolf. You don't want to give an apology just to move the process along, because that can actually be even more damaging and give your partner the impression that you're either trying to end the conversation or you're trying to turn it back to you, or any number of things that are actually the opposite of what I'm sorry is. So the way that I think about it is this: Have you ever heard about that school that the parents were, 5 minutes, 10 minutes late sometimes to pick up their kids from daycare? And the school was like, great idea. Let's charge the parents. I think it was like per minute that they were late or per 5 minutes that they were late. And that will motivate them to come get their kids on time. But what actually happened was that the parents were even later, because they had this way of assuaging their guilt if they were on their way to pick up their kids, but they realized, I have to make a quick stop and it's going to be 10 times harder to do that with my kid in the car. But that's okay because I can just pay the daycare the extra money and I'll feel better about having the staff stay late and watching my kid. And so when you think about apologies can sort of have that quality of assuaging your guilt. And even if you don't feel guilty about what happened, they can have a quality of wanting to connect with your partner, but not necessarily wanting to be with your partner's pain. And so you want to be really careful kind of dancing with this paradox, because I'm definitely not saying never apologize to your partner because they're not going to take it seriously because it's just a way for you to feel better. No. You can apologize with a genuine concern and a genuine acknowledgement of what they went through. And you want to make sure that when you're apologizing, that's what it is, that it's not a way to end the conversation. It's not a way for you not to sit with the pain of that you did something unintentionally that hurt your partner. And so you don't want to use apology as an escape. You want to use it as a true connector. And the last paradox that I want to talk about in this video is that it's about you, but it's also not about you. And on the other end too, when we're upset with our partner, it's about them, but it's not about them. And what I mean by that is that we are all walking around the world with our template, and it's based on our experience, it's based on our attachment, it's based on all of the interactions that we've had in the world that have shown us what to expect and what bothers us and what excites us. And that's a really beautiful thing. And when something happens to push someone's buttons, it is about the interaction. We don't want to bypass that and say something like, this is just because of your daddy issues, and if you didn't have those, then you wouldn't be upset with me. Because there's not a world that exists where that partner was created in a different way. But what's also true about that is that I don't have to take it personally as the hurter. I don't have to task myself with avoiding their triggers, or even after I know about their triggers, I don't have to task myself with preventing them, managing them, or expecting that I'm gonna tiptoe around them. I can be really present with the trigger and also know that I am a catalyst for that trigger happening. And this is a really tough interplay to hold, because it can be frustrating when your partner has triggers that you're just trying to live your life. You're not trying to upset anyone, but because of how they were created and the same reasons that you probably love the shit out of them for, they're also triggered by these things. And so the way that you can do repair there isn't necessarily about avoiding the trigger itself. It's about understanding the context and being really honest and present with each other about what boundaries and what considerations do work for both of you. And that can be a really nuanced conversation. And so I'll get into that in future videos. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to hear in the comments below which paradox stands out to you the most. And I will see you later. Bye.